feds came from all over. Boy, all hell broke loose. There was about 15 different police. And, wow, were they mad. Where's my money? I gave my money. That's not my money. Guy was berserk. Because if they don't have the marked money, they ain't got nothing. My name is Danny Trejo. And before I became a movie star and machete, I was an armed robber. I robbed a few stores with a hand grenade. I'm from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. As a kid, I was surrounded by girl cousins. I had a mom and dad that were really too busy. The only one that ever had any time for me was my Uncle Gilbert. My Uncle Gilbert was the last of 11 kids. By the time Gilbert came along, my grandma and grandpa were kind of done with kids, you know what I mean? And Gilbert was 6 years older than me, so me and Gilbert kind of became outcasts together because we always got in trouble. My uncle would steal my grandfather's car. And he'd take me and he would deal weed. I didn't know he was dealing weed. And he would pull up to somebody's house, they'd come out and say, give me 3, and he'd roll up 3 joints and sell 3 joints, and then that's what we did. The first time I watched Gilbert do a robbery, it was him and the friend named Charlie. I didn't even know that they were going to do anything. You know what I mean? But stopped in front of a liquor store, they both got out of the car, they both came out. And it's funny because they left the car running, you know, and they were just laughing and counting money. It seemed so easy, and they did it so much. My Uncle Gilbert gave me heroin when I was 12. I remember him telling me, hold this, I'm holding this, and bang. And the next thing I remember was that I was outside and I was just sitting there and I couldn't keep my head up. It was a great feeling. I remember trying to eat this ice cream and I would nod and what would wake me up was the dogs. Hey, get over. I don't know if I ever got any ice cream or not, but I'll never forget that day. And I think from the time I was 12 then to the time I was 25, I tried to recapture that day. As soon as I started using drugs, I started committing crimes. I committed my first armed robbery at 14. I remember I stole a gun from my Uncle Art. It was a revolver, but the gun I got was broken. You had to hold it like this or it would fall. And so me and a friend of mine robbed a market on Lankershim Boulevard. I can remember going, give me the money. Give me the money. Give me the money. She was an old lady, and I kept saying, no, the box. Because they kept all the big cash in a cigar box underneath the counter. When I kept pointing, down there. And when I went there, the gun broke in half. No. So now it's pointing at my shoe, and right when it did, this guy comes running out of the back with a cleaver. So me and Mike took off running, and my gun is going, you know. Got away with the $11, but it was kind of a fiasco. We ran away laughing. But then it just escalates. It's like robberies become a habit. You can be driving down the street with $400 in your pocket and go, hey, right there, that's a good score, and go rob something else. And I think that's one of the things that Gilbert happened to do was he hooked me to that easy life, not just drugs. I spent my teenage years stealing as much as I could, getting away with it. Sometimes Dennis and I sold drugs, and sometimes we sold fake drugs, which was just sugar. Dennis had set up a drug deal. Yeah, the minute I got a look at this guy, I knew something was up. The guy buying the drugs, his partner looks a little shady. I mean, too clean cut. You know, I knew he was a cop. I was glad we were selling him sugar. Dennis had the sugar, gave it to the Fed, and then the Fed turned around trying to give me the money, and I just looked at him straight in the... I looked at Dennis. Dennis grabbed the money. And then they left, and then I told Dennis that it's no good, Holmes. Guy's a cop. Nah. I knew they were in trouble because the feds mark money, so do the police. So what I did, the minute they left, I went and switched out the money at a restaurant where I knew the waitress. As we pulled into Dennis's, feds came from all over. Boy, all hell broke loose. There was about 15 different police, and wow, were they mad. Where's my money? I gave my money. That's not my money. Guy was berserk, because if they don't have the marked money, they ain't got nothing. And so this guy beat me all the way to the Federal Building downtown. I was on the floor of a 1965 Buick Riviera. Beautiful. Had tan interior. I'll never forget it. And I'm bleeding all hey, I'm bleeding all over your car. I was sentenced to 6 to 10 years for sale in lewd of narcotics. That means sale in pretendies dope. While serving my time, I was transferred to San Quentin. Cinco de Mayo, 1968. Powers that be in prison did probably the stupidest thing in the world. They invited an outside college baseball team to play a bunch of drunk Mexicans. They bring in some absolute Caucasian baseball team. They all look like Ricky Schroeder. The third baseman, I'll never forget, man. This big white boy just had gum, chewing like double bubble. You know, this big old waddle. You're not allowed gum in prison. And this guy is just like letting everybody know, I'm chewing gum. And Ray had come down from Tascadero, which is the mental hospital for the criminally insane. I remember Ray saying, damn, I wish I had some gum. Ray had gone up, asked that guy for some gum. That guy's, no, I'm not supposed to give you any. Bam! Bam! Ray smacked him. And in prison, when something goes down, it just all goes down. And it was alleged that I hit Lieutenant Givens in the head with a rock. All I remember seeing him bleeding. It was just like chaos. And then they blew that whistle. When the whistle starts blowing, that means they're gonna shoot. The minute that, bam! Me and Ray both turned up, we fell. And Ray, God, like a little kid, are they gonna hurt us? Nah, no, we're already hurt. Don't worry about us. They marched us to the hole. There's solitary, which is you're in a cell by yourself. And then there's a hole, which is completely dark, quiet. And that, I think they outlawed that now. When we were in the hole, I was questioning my whole life. I was 24 years old. That's a baby. Because they said we attacked guards. Those are gas chamber offenses. I remember asking God to let me die with dignity. That's all I remember. I got out of the hole a month or so later, and I started going to AA. That changed my life. And it helped me never to touch drugs or alcohol again. And I started helping my fellow inmates. And when I went to parole board in July of 1969, and I started talking about AA and a good guy I turned in, he said, we're we're kicking you out of here. And I was stunned. They were just tired of seeing me. After I got out of prison, and I became a drug counselor, my whole life changed. My whole life came from a taker to a giver and a helper. That's all I do. No more life of crime for me.
I'm Richard Munchkin, and I have taken millions of dollars out of casinos around the world as a professional gambler. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and I was fascinated with games from the time I was very little. The winters back there are brutal, so we would stay inside and play games. In high school, my older brother invited some of his friends over to the house to play poker. And we were literally playing for nickels and dimes. And at the end of the day, I was ahead, $5.20. And it was like the heavens opened and the angels began to sing. And I thought, oh my God, I can actually make money playing cards. Like, this is the greatest thing in the world. So I started playing as much as I could. Basically, I went through college playing poker. That was how I earned a living while I was in college. And then one day, I was playing backgammon with a friend in a bar in Chicago. And he told me that he had a system for beating blackjack. There's a way of counting the cards and being able to keep track of them, and you can actually have a mathematical advantage. And he recommended a book called Playing Blackjack as a Business. And I got it, and I read it, and I thought, okay, this makes sense. This is math. For my 21st birthday, I flew out to Las Vegas, and I started practicing to become a professional card counter. Counting cards is a method for keeping track of low cards and high cards, and the ratio of those two things. One of my friends calls me once, and he says, I found a game that's really good. That means that I'm gonna go strap $50,000 in cash to my body, leave the wife and young kids at home, and head to an airport. And in this case, I was heading for Moscow. I had never been to Russia before and had no reason to go because prior to this, they had no casinos. And the casino people really didn't understand the games. And they were giving away the store. The rules were so good. Any blackjack player that heard would have immediately jumped on a plane and flown over there to try to play. I go into this little casino, and it's off the lobby of a hotel. And there is a nightclub that's closed. I go look in the nightclub. It's dark. There's, chairs and tables and a little stage. And then way in the back, I see a door with a porthole window with light behind it. I think it's the kitchen, but I go back there and I push through the door and here's this little casino. There's 6 or 8 tables. There's only 2 customers in the whole place. But I sit down and I start to play. In 15 minutes, I'd won $26,000. Now, the pit boss is a young guy. He looks like he's wearing his father's suit, and every hand I win, he just starts to look sicker and sicker. And the color starts to drain from his face, and I keep thinking, this is not gonna end well. So I finish the shoe, and I think I better just cash out. And now the same guy is the cashier, and he says, look, I'm sorry, we don't have enough cash to pay you. I say, how much do you have? Basically, he gives me back my $2,000, so I'm left with 22 $1,000 chips. And then he tells me, the owner will be here tomorrow. Come back tomorrow, he'll have your money. And now I'm starting to think, oh boy, this is gonna be a problem. I'm gonna get screwed out of $22,000. I immediately go to the Cosmos poker room and see Jeff. Now, Jeff is an Australian guy who discovered all these blackjack games in Russia early, and he has moved here and has been here for years. Jeff runs the poker room at the Cosmos Hotel. So he knows every casino and everything that is going on in the gambling scene in Moscow. And I tell him what happened. He goes, oh, yeah, they can't afford that much. He says, this is the way it works in Russia. The laws and the police and the courts, worthless. Every business has what's called a roof. And your roof is your local mafia boss. If you have a dispute, you go to your roof. And that casino's roof is Chechen mob. And he says, and you're in luck because my roof here at the poker room is also Chechen mob, but my roof is higher than their roof. And I say, okay. And he says, would you take $18,000 for the 22 chips? I was like, done. Let's do it right now. Jeff says, I have to leave, but this is Natasha. And here's this Russian woman, and she's mysterious like a femme fatale, kind of scary, like if you had sex with her, you might not live through it. And he says, Natasha will take care of you. She will introduce you to our roof and meet at the other casino. There's two huge guys with a little guy in the middle, and they're all wearing black turtlenecks and black suits. And I look over at the closed nightclub, and they have a metal detector there and two big security guards. And those security guards are not happy. It seems pretty clear these two groups of mobsters do not like each other. Natasha starts talking to the little one. So it's clear to me that these are my Chechen mobsters, and the guys over at the metal detector are their Chechen mobsters. She says, okay, we go. And now we all start heading for the metal detector. As we're going, the guards start talking to the guys behind me in Russian. And as we're going, the volume is getting louder and louder and louder, and to the point now they're yelling at each other. And as I'm going through the metal detector, one of the guards grabs me by the wrist and starts pulling me in. And one of the guys behind me grabs me by the other wrist and starts pulling me out. And now I'm in a literal tug of war between two factions of the Chechen mob. I pull loose, and we all back out into the lobby, and Natasha says to me, those men do not want these men to go inside. I said, yeah, I kind of got the message. And she says, you and me, we go in, and if they have the money, okay. If not, don't say a word, just come back out. Okay. We go into the casino, and it's the same pit boss, and he is white and sweating. And he says, this is very bad. You should not have brought those men here. They should not be here. And I said, do you have my money? And he says, I have some. I said, how much? He says, 1,000. The guy gives me the 1,000, and I give him one chip. He says, you come back in a week, and I give you another 1,000, and another week, another 1,000. And I say, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm gonna be back in America. So I'm gonna give the chips to them, the other mobsters out there in the lobby. They'll collect the money. And he says, oh no, only you can collect this money. I said, well, you'll have to take that up with them. So we go back out to the lobby, and I still have 21 $1,000 chips. And I want to leave. I'm supposed to leave tomorrow. My only hope is that these guys are going to give me the $18,000. Natasha talks to the little guy in Russian, and he keeps shaking his head. No problem. Give me the chips. I said, well, Jeff said, like, you would give me $18,000 for the chips, and I don't want to. He was like, oh, okay, you give them to Jeff. I called Jeff, and Jeff says, leave the chips with Natasha and come down in the morning and pick up your money. I was like, Jeff, no. I'm not going to give up my chips to anybody without getting the money at the same time. I'm certainly not going to trust this Chechen mobster, and I'm not just going to leave the chips with Natasha. I'm not even going to leave them with Jeff. No, you get the chips when I get the money. And he says, all right, well, just come down in the morning. I'll have the money for you there in the morning, and then you can give the chips to Natasha. The next morning, I go to the poker room. Natasha is there. I say, do you have the money? And she nods her head. And I say, where is it? And she goes over to a cabinet. She comes back with $18,000. I don't even count it. I'm like, thank God. And I give her the chips.
And Jeff's roof will collect the full $21,000 after I'm gone.
It was one of the happiest transactions of my life. I immediately jump in a cab and I drive directly to the airport, and I got on the plane.
I had somehow survived a literal tug-of-war between
Two factions of the Chechnyan mob.
counting cards is never worth risking your life.